All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Adam Kimmel. He is the founder and principal technical content writer for ASK Consulting Solutions. I know that's a mouthful, but we've been working with Adam for years, and we absolutely love him. And we think he has a lot of great stuff to share with us today. So we are excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here, guys. Appreciate it.
So I think first and foremost, why don't we tell the audience a little bit about yourself and kind of your background in engineering. And today we're also going to talk a little bit about engineers who can write, because Adam is one of those, and there is a debate about that. So we are going to dive into that. But before we get there, why don't you tell us a little bit about your engineering background?
Engineers that write, my favorite topic. Yeah. So, my background is one really of research. So I have two engineering degrees, one undergrad in chemical, one graduate in mechanical from Penn State and Marquette. And so I spent a lot of my career in kind of the front end white space innovation area. Fuel cells, designing components for fuel cell systems, heat exchangers, hydrogen reactors, heat exchangers for electric vehicles, data center cooling modules. I mean, really anything that, thermal management, I spent a lot of time in heat transfer, and then also some time in consumer products. Also making sustainable products for consumers to help with safety and help environmental items. So, there's been a couple stops along the way, but the common theme has been front end research, what doesn't exist, what should exist, and how do we make something that fills the space. Throughout that time, I was able to get a few patents, and that was really my first foray into the importance of writing and to understand, all right, well, there's all these great ideas, but nobody understands them. Is there any value to them really at all? And so that light bulb kind of went off early on in my career, and I thought, well, I can let the patent attorneys write about my idea, or I can just explain it myself. And so that's really where I developed the ability and need to describe things in ways that not just technical people can get, but broader and more general audiences.
So I think the general question is why there's this stigma around engineers and writing, right? And why is it that so many people believe engineers can't write? Like, why is that?
Well, I think there's a couple stigmas. There's one that engineers can't write, and one that marketers, are trying to trick people into selling something. And so I think there's just some natural conflict between the two, at least in historical terms. Engineers tend to think very analytically with data. And so the words aren't as important as a graph. I know for myself, if I'm reading a technical article or a journal article, my eyes are going to jump all around the page to find the graph, because the graph tells me most things you need to know. And then you can go back to the words and kind of figure it out. So there's really no story to it. It's more about pure data. And so I think engineers with that data-driven focus just de-emphasize writing. I think they intellectually realize it's important, but it's just not been a priority because they're so focused on, technical items and chops and data and things like that.
So when you were positioned and you started writing, obviously you had to do some writing in during the course of your education, right? But when you
we're in grade school, we all
right, we had to do something, right?
Sure.
But what did you struggle with at first in kind of getting your message across, let's say even in regards to these patents?
Yeah, I think when an engineer is first asked to write, at least for me, my approach was, all right, I have to make sure that the technical part is excellent. And so the words that were used were just, they were totally exclusive. There was a very, very small group of people that read this that fully understood what I was talking about. And so I kind of went to the journal entry model of kind of like what a thesis would say. Very, 5-syllable words, things like this, to just prove, aptitude in the industry. Like, I'm an expert in this and I have the authority to talk because of all these big words that I'm using. But the struggle was, of course, I would publish something and let someone read it, and they would kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, this is really good. Kind of look around and they're all, bored and distracted because it didn't make sense to them. And so I quickly saw that, if my audience or whoever I was writing for didn't understand it, they're not going to value it, and they kind of set it aside, and it just kind of sat on the shelf. So the biggest pivot was going from the I have to make this sound brilliant technically to what is really the story? What is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And less from a product focus and more from an audience or client focus. What is their goal in all of this? And what does maybe the solution that we found help them do that they couldn't do before? Versus, look how great this product is, and here's all the complicated features we developed, and here was the process that we used. Mm-hmm. That's good stuff, but nobody really needs to know that because you're trying to solve problems at the end of the day as an engineer. We're problem solvers. So the big learning was, we have to think less about the technology and more about the audience.
Okay, so we've worked with a lot of engineers, and we can definitely attest to everything you're saying, right? I mean, and it's great. We have some engineers where the technical stuff is not that I know, but we hear it's spot on. It's great stuff, but it's more like facts on a page. So you mentioned storytelling, and so what would you say to an engineer who needs to start telling a story? Like, how do they even approach that? They have all this technical stuff. They look at, okay, what's the problem? I mean, would you say that I don't know the right way to say this. Not that the way it sounds, it doesn't need to sound so elevated in language in order to be a great story, right? We don't just use all these fancy terms, right? So kind of keep it simple. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, the story is important, but also the content is important. So you have to communicate these technical topics at the end of the day. Even, telling a simple story is important, but it has to get the main message across. So the way I bridge that is really, you have to engage them right away. So in a technical document, I think people are already going into it do I need to spend minutes on this? It is, maybe the topic isn't 100% exciting to them, but they know they need to read it or something like that. So how do you grab them right away and make them at least slow their thumb down as they're scrolling down the screen, right? I mean, at least slow down and read a little bit more. And so the first goal is, how do you get into that second line? And so having a broad statement that highlights a pain point that they have is one of the best ways to do that. And you don't want to scare them, but there's certainly pain points that in given industries, right? I mean, the chip shortage. Anybody that can solve the chip shortage is going to be really interesting to hear. And so, a good idea around that's always going to be palatable for everybody. So my first goal would always be, all right, just get them to the second line and then to the second paragraph, and then hit them with some data. Then it's give them, this is your audience. So, you need to come up with some way to engage them in a way that makes you that establishes your leadership in this area, or your authority to talk about a topic. And so at that point, they're interested, you're credible, now they care about the rest of it. And so now you can walk into your, Brian, to your point, these the funnel introduction, the 3 points from high school and this kind of stuff, you can really lay your case out. And by that time, you've established so much credibility that they're with you on this journey to whatever position you're trying to take. I mean, this is especially impactful for white papers that for me are trying to impart a technical opinion. I mean, the best white papers are a technical opinion that not everybody shares. I mean, maybe it's a controversial topic. I mean, for me, it's, batteries versus hydrogen. What's the best way to deliver alternative energy? There's a lot of heat around this, a lot of momentum in both batteries and hydrogen. Which is better? I mean, the real answer is they both have their place, but if there's an application of one that people hadn't thought about, they're going to be really interested to learn that. And so making sure that you bring them along before you hit them with why will get them, enrolled and engaged, to your point.
Do you think also too, right, a lot of times people, when they write, and this is not just engineers, this is anyone, they're missing the intent of who their audience is, right? And what they're supposed to get out of it. And do you think sometimes with engineering, engineers are sometimes talking to other engineers, sometimes they're trying to get their thoughts across to whatever, create something new. So they have to, in a way, write a different way or slant, how they're saying things to a different degree. Do you think, do you see a lot of that happening in the engineer writing, or is that something that's harder sometimes for engineers to go? Because they may not be talking to, if they're talking to a CEO, that person may not be as technical as the people on the engineering team.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical. It's one of the first questions that I'm always asking. All right, here's an article that I need to write. Well, who am I writing it for? Who's going to read this? And are they the only person that's going to read it? I mean, a lot of what I write is marketers and engineers, so this thing has to speak technically to give the authority to the engineering team, but also from a marketing standpoint, why does the consumer or customer care? Mm-hmm. So it has to deliver both. And the tone of the article is critical. And then the other part of it is readability. I mean, even CEOs that, are 50, 60 plus years old or whatever, I mean, they're, seasoned and experienced, but they may not want to read something that's, beyond an elevated high school reading level. Not because they can't, but because there's not the time. And so
sometimes we just want like 5 bullet points,
That's why executive summaries exist. If you could 3 bullet point this as quickly for me as you can, please do that. And so that's why, headings and formatting are also a key. I mean, get their eyes, darting down the page, hitting the key points, and then, using headings for executives like that. If I know that it's a heavy marketing or executive audience, you could read the headings and get 90% of what the article's saying. If the headings are well written. I mean, you want the support within that, of course, but you also want to make sure that if they just have a second to look, they're getting something out of it so that you're delivering value to them.
Do you want to know how lazy I've gotten?
How lazy?
I just read headlines now. I don't even open articles anymore.
Yeah, and this is
bad information that way sometimes, Nicolette.
Well, it's something that I kind of saw happening in when people would respond and engage in articles, and you always want engagement. So you know how well you did based on the questions you get. I mean, if these questions have nothing to do with what you wrote about, something's off. And this is why I think SEO is so critical. I mean, engineers typically. SEO is a scary monster for engineers, and it just feels like there's this whole world out there that others know that we don't, and we would just need their help with this. And, the way I approached it was this is just another algorithm, another problem to solve, another equation to crack. And, writing headings that improve SEO not only gets you found, but it also delivers the core message you're trying to get. So the other thing that's important to know is what keywords do you want your audience taking? How do you integrate them? I mean, Google's algorithms are now it's not about keyword stuffing anymore. It's about just writing good content, which is great news for those of us that actually write. So, if for the Nicolettes that are headline readers, we can go in there and tailor a headline exactly as we need to. And if that hits the right note, then we have them. Then the engagement's there. Then the excitement's there to join you throughout the article.
Right, and I think another thing with with the SEO aspect, right? If you're just going in, if engineers think of it this way, they're just trying to answer a question or get someone to some point, and they focus on that. That's really going to be a good chunk of your SEO, right? If you really stay focused on what that intent is throughout the article, you'll get found on what you're trying to get across if you do that very directly and accurately.
Yeah, and I think it kind of adds to the point of make sure you're targeting the right areas, because if you're given a keyword and you deliver that, is that really what your audience wants? And so I think you can do that, but the strategy is equally as important. At least for me, it's if you know what the pain points are in a given industry, you can craft some content around that so that, there may be a suite of different words or topics that you can, maybe a white paper goes to one of those and a couple of offshoot blogs, hit a few of the other ones, so that you're targeting the breadth of keywords and topics that you may need versus 5 pieces around one specific keyword or topic. That tends to be overkill, and then people kind of feel like it's saturated at some point too. So, understanding where your content fits in the broader scope of the whole strategy, and then making sure that strategy is going to resonate with the client. I mean, that's one of the hardest things probably to do as a marketer, I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too. You mentioned SEO, because SEO is a ton of data. So you would think the engineers would love it. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
Like they would just love the SEO aspect because it is so much data and, percents and relevancy and all these other things, that you would think they would just eat it up, because you can make a ton of charts and graphs around keywords or SEO type things. So.
Yeah, and one thing that I found is that engineers love, like as I said, they love data. So if you could present this SEO data in a way that resonates with them, for me this would be some kind of a Pareto chart or bar graph or histogram or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I think it could demystify it a little bit for us. And all right, this is really what we're talking about. Here's the trend. If you do this, you get this return. Putting it in terms of an ROI and that kind of stuff is going to resonate a lot more than a lot of words around SEO and words like algorithm and things. It's just an equation to solve, and engineers love to defeat equations. So if Google changes theirs, well, we think we can beat it. So go ahead, I'll beat it. Don't worry. That's
You're like, those engineers at Google aren't smarter than I am. I will beat this algorithm.
I mean, they're phenomenal. So it's a great challenge, but that's, I think, the fun part of all of this is, what right do I have to have someone read my article versus someone else's on a given topic? And how do you establish that leadership and credibility as an author and as a brand voice? And as different industries, I mean, the electronic components industry has, I think, done a great job with inbound content. I mean, this industry and market is really alive and awake to the benefits of content. I read a lot for alternative energy, automotive, and manufacturing. And manufacturing is one that's really been slow to adopt, but they're waking up, I guess, which is exciting, because as soon as they start to realize the benefit of inbound content, the financial benefits and other, client relationships come right behind. I mean, it's so key. And these industries that had typically resisted that kind of marketing or new style of marketing are now starting to really jump on the train. And it's fun to see other industries that haven't been as engaged as EE really come on board.
You brought up a good point, right? Engineers, how do they build that brand as a writer or as a content creator? So how do they build their brand? Because, there are some pretty famous engineers out there.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think that it's been done most effectively is if you can understand and articulate the biggest pain points that a group has, that means you've spent at least time reading about, researching, or understanding it. I've written a lot of articles for the simulation space. So I used to run, CFD and FEA models, which are analytic or like numerical models that could predict physics in a 3D computer program. So like a vibration profile on an automotive application, or how fluid is flowing around a given flow path. If you understand the challenges that those engineers have, those things take a ton of computational bandwidth. So how do you get that analysis done in addition to just doing your job and running email and running everything else you have to run? I mean, that's an engineer that would read that is going to go into it skeptical that marketers wouldn't be anywhere near what they do. But wait a minute, this article was written by somebody that seems to have done this before. It changes the whole credibility mindset. So I think being able to interview SMEs that you're not, that you haven't spent a day in the life of, and quickly getting to, well, what drives this person crazy on a daily basis, or what solution would make their life easier that then they could champion in their organization for the company selling the product. I mean, that's been a really effective way, is to get these subject matter engineering experts to help champion a product solution that they really believe in, that's helped them. And you can't solve that problem until you know what the problem is and know how to solve it. And so having an engineer be able to talk to the technical resource at a client has unearthed a ton of good information that maybe wasn't there in the article brief or something, that but it's really enriched how well that problem can be solved.
You do use a lot of social media as well. You're very active there, and I think that also kind of showcasing that expertise that you're gaining, that you're gathering all of this knowledge and all the stuff that you're gathering is definitely playing a role as well. A lot of engineers don't want to use social media as much, right, Brian? We've seen that.
Yeah, we see
a lot of
we see that. Well, yeah, we see that where they're not. And what's interesting is they have such brilliant ideas, but and I don't. Is it really sometimes maybe it's an issue with IP, or do you know what I mean? That they don't want to put stuff out there, or is it just they're more introverts? I don't know.
Well, I think it's both of those. I mean, if you are developing a new product that is in a competitive landscape, you're absolutely going to be bound by intellectual property and those kind of things. So it makes you gun shy. So even if you're able to talk about a certain topic, an engineer will be very, very hesitant if they're not 100% sure that they're safe to discuss and disclose. So, and there's really nothing that, as a writer I could do other than just to make sure. I always ask, is there anything proprietary I have to not say? Because oftentimes, when you talk to a subject matter expert at a level they're comfortable with, they'll start oversharing. And so if I hear something that sounds a little bit close to something they shouldn't include, I may go, can I put that in there, or should we just
delete?
Yeah, or just more generally talk about it without hitting the specifics that a lawyer wouldn't necessarily like. But there is an introversion point as well. I mean, there's no doubt that being on video and being out there on social media is very scary to introverts. And so for me, I only use LinkedIn. That's my core platform, but that's another one where you can SEO your LinkedIn profile and tailor your audience to read the content that most resonates with them. I mean, it's the same problem that I'm trying to solve for clients, and it's a way to generate inbound content for myself as a writer. So I'm developing a course to help engineers with this because I get a lot of people ask me like, well, how would I even start if I see the value in writing and I know that I need to get better at it, but where do I even begin? And so it's one of those things where enough people have asked that like, okay, this is a need. So how can I help people do this? And that's a passion of mine, is to make sure that engineers that develop these great ideas are able to get the ideas out into the world that kind of help the greater good. And so the course is just going to be around utilizing LinkedIn and other kind of social media to help with inbound, build your business. It'll have SEO portions in there, basic principles of how to write, and another important point is how to research. I think research is an undervalued piece of the whole thing. I mean, if your research is flawed or not complete enough, you're going to draw the wrong conclusion. So understanding, how to research. I mean, and for me, this is where I spend most of my career is learning that. How do I get to be an expert as quickly as I can? That'll be another part of it.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really hitting all the points that engineers get nervous about and going, it's just another equation. It's another problem to solve. Here are the challenges. Here's how you navigate them. And here's kind of a roadmap for at least my approach. I'm sure there are others, but here's a way to do this to get from, subject matter expert to, inbound marketer.
So Adam, you're also working on a book, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's two of them actually that I have going. One of them is going to accompany the course, and so what I want to do is get the course out there, start helping some people, get some feedback, and then put together the how-to book, so that if you don't have the time or energy to do the course, have the book. I mean, other marketers that I've worked with in the past have written resources that are kind of roadmaps and guidebooks, more for the writing aspect than anything else. But I think this need of helping technical people convert to writing experts is really where I'm best suited to help. I mean, it's the biggest need that I see around this topic, and it's really a passion of mine. So there'll be a book to kind of accompany the course, and then there'll be one more about my general story, because I get a lot of people asking me, how do you go from a research engineer working on hydrogen reactors to a content writer for cybersecurity? Like, these things seem way different, and I think the thread is research, and it's connected by research, and it's developing those principles and integrating them in, and then also understanding the value of marketing and how I changed my mindset from, marketing is when engineers can't handle the technical side, what they major in, to, wow, marketers can really help, augment this product that I've created, or can really shift the industry in a great direction.
All right. So, Adam, when is this course coming out?
So the course will be ready in the fall. I'm creating the content for it right now, and I hope the book will then follow in 2022. And so after the course, I'm going to plan a series of kind of webinars to help, market this. There'll be a LinkedIn campaign around it. And the goal is just to help, if there's an engineer that sees the value here and realizes it, or a marketing team that goes, you know what, I need my whole staff to get better in this area. So let's have 5 or 6 of my team improve here and get better. That's who it'll be for. And so that's what the campaigns will be around. And so in the fall, I'll start my LinkedIn blitz around this and really try to drive some excitement around it.
Well, Adam, you're definitely going to have to come back and talk.
Yeah, I'd love to. This was great. Thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Adam.
Sure. All right. Thanks. Take care.